The old alien mining tunnels were cold, dark, and full of strange sounds. But Command had ordered a final inspection before the area was sealed off forever. His job was simple: scan the walls, check for leftover equipment, and report back. He had done this many times before. It was supposed to be routine. But this time, it wasn't. He walked slowly, his boots echoing against the metal floor. The scanner in his hand beeped every few steps. The air was still, but thick. Too still. Cole stopped. He looked up at the ceiling. Dust was falling. Then, everything went wrong. The ground cracked beneath his feet. The scanner slipped from his hand. The ceiling gave way. He shouted, but there was no time to run. Rocks crashed down like thunder. The tunnel folded in on itself. Cole fell hard, hit his head, and the world went dark. When he opened his eyes, he couldn't move. Everything hurt. His leg was pinned under a slab of stone. Sparks flickered from broken lights above. Dust filled the air like smoke. He coughed. He groaned. "Hello?" he called out. His voice was weak. Dry. "Is anyone there?" No answer. Just the sound of dripping water. He tried his comm dead. No signal. No way out. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Soft. Bare. Not human. His breath caught in his throat. He reached for a sharp piece of metal near his side and held it tight. The steps grew closer. Slow. Careful. Then a shape appeared in the darkness. It was a girl. But not human. Not exactly. She had soft glowing lines on her arms and face, like stars painted on her skin. Her hair was white, long, and almost floating. Her eyes, they glowed too. Not blue. Not green. Silver. She knelt beside him without a word. Cole raised the metal, shaking. "Stay back." She didn't flinch. She looked at him, into him, with strange calm. Then, gently, she placed her hand on the stone trapping his leg. Her skin glowed brighter. The rock slowly shifted. Cole gasped as he pulled his leg free. It was bruised, maybe broken, but he could move now. What are you?" he asked, still breathing hard. She said nothing. She just stood and walked a few steps ahead, then looked back. She was telling him, "Follow me." He limped after her, pain shooting up his leg. The tunnels were different here. Older. Warmer. Somehow, they felt alive. She led him to a small open space with a glowing pool in the center. Strange moss grew along the walls. She motioned for him to sit. He did. She pulled something from a small pouch tied around her waist, a leaf, wide and blue, and pressed it against his leg. It tingled. The pain faded, just a little. Still silent, she turned and sat across from him. They stared at each other. He tried again. "What's your name?" No answer. "Do you understand me?" She blinked once. Then touched her chest with 2 fingers. "See ya," she said. Her voice was soft. Almost musical. Then she pointed at him. "You?" "Cole," he said. "I'm Cole." She nodded slowly. And for a moment, there was peace. 2 strangers. Trapped. Surrounded by silence. But not alone anymore. Then Cole's stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since morning. There was no food. No water. Just this alien girl and glowing moss. He leaned back against the wall. "Great. I'm gonna starve in here." Sia stood again. She reached into the side of her armor, just below her shoulder. She pressed gently, and a few drops of glowing white liquid came from her skin. She caught them in a small shell. Then walked to him. And offered it. Cole stared. "What is that?" She didn't answer. She just pushed it closer. Her eyes calm. He looked at the glowing milk. It smelled sweet. Warm. Strange. He shook his head. No, no way. But his body disagreed. His lips were dry. His hands shaking. He was already fading. Sia stepped back and sat again. She didn't push. She just waited. Watched. And Cole, alone in the deep dark with no way out, held the shell in both hands. And asked himself, how far will I go to survive? The shell sat in Cole's hands. Warm. Glowing softly. Inside, the white liquid shimmered like moonlight. It wasn't just strange, it was alive. He looked at Sia. She sat across from him, still and quiet, like a statue made of stars. She wasn't forcing him. She wasn't begging him. But her eyes. Her eyes said please. Cole's lips were cracked. His throat was dry like sand. His leg throbbed with pain. He needed something, anything, to stay awake. Okay, he whispered. One sip. He brought the shell to his mouth and tasted the milk. Warm. Sweet. It slid down his throat like soft light. At first, nothing happened. Then, his chest filled with heat. Not fire. More like a blanket on a frozen day. He blinked. The pain in his leg faded a little more. His hands stopped shaking. What is this? He said, voice hoarse. Sia just watched. Then she gave a tiny nod. Almost like she was proud. Cole lay back and sighed. His body felt like it was breathing again for the first time since the cave-in. Thank you, he said. Sia tilted her head. Then placed a hand on her chest. Sia, she said again, slowly. Then she pointed to him. Cole. She smiled. It was small. Barely there. But it was real. They sat in silence for a while. Time passed slowly in the cave. No clocks. No sun. Only the distant hum of the broken tunnels. And their breathing. Cole wanted to talk. To ask questions. But she didn't understand most words. Still, he tried. He pointed to the walls. Where are we? She looked around, then drew a symbol in the dirt, 3 circles, 1 broken. He didn't know what it meant. He pointed to her again. Why are you here? She touched her head, then her heart, then spread her hands wide. It wasn't an answer. But somehow, he understood. She was left behind. Or maybe, forgotten. That night, or what felt like night, Cole woke with a jolt. His stomach growled again. His head spun. Sia was already awake. She walked toward him with another shell. Same glow. Same milk. He shook his head. I can't just take it from you. She gently pushed it into his hand. Then placed her own hand on his heart. Cole. 1 word. But it held weight. It held care. She wanted him to live. Even if it cost her. He drank again. And this time, it felt stronger. His mind cleared. His eyes sharpened. And for just a second, he heard something. A voice. Not out loud. But inside. Her voice. You need to live. He looked at her, shocked. Did you just speak in my head? Sia looked confused. She hadn't moved. She hadn't said anything. But somehow, he heard her. He reached out, touched her hand. And a flash hit his mind. An image. A white room. Machines. Sia alone. Cold. Afraid. Then it was gone. Cole gasped and pulled back. What was that? Sia touched her own temple, then his. Memory, she whispered. Her voice barely came out. But it was clear. You gave me milk, he said. And now I can hear you? She nodded once. Bond. Not full, not yet. He sat down hard. Everything was changing. Too fast. But also, it felt right. He wasn't just surviving. He was connected now. To her. To this place. To something more. Later, she helped him walk a little. Just to stretch. They passed strange roots growing from the wall. She pointed to one and smiled. Then handed it to him. He bit it. Terrible taste. But she laughed. The first real laugh. Cole grinned. That's funny to you, huh? She pointed at his face. Laughed again. And something inside him felt lighter. Even here, underground, alone, lost, he wasn't just a victim. He was living. Because of her. And Sia? She had been trapped longer. She had survived without anyone. Until now. Now, she wasn't alone either. At first, Cole thought he was just healing. His legs stopped throbbing. His chest didn't feel so tight. His head was clear. He thought maybe the glowing milk was just medicine. Alien medicine. But then something else began. He started seeing flashes. Not with his eyes, but in his mind. When he touched the cave walls, they felt warm. Alive. He could feel vibrations under the stone, like pulses. He didn't know why. He just did. One time, while drinking water Sia had filtered through glowing moss, he dropped the cup. He reached to catch it, and the cup stopped mid-air. Just for a second. Then fell. He didn't say anything. Not at first. Maybe it was his imagination. Maybe he was too tired. Too hungry. But then it happened again. His fingers lit up faintly in the dark. Just like hers. And her eyes. They watched him now not just with care. But with wonder. Sia, he said, showing her his hand. Is this normal? She took his palm gently. Held it to her forehead. Closed her eyes. When she opened them, she said one word. Chosen. Cole blinked. Chosen for what? Sia didn't answer right away. She placed both hands on the glowing moss wall beside them. Suddenly, a door opened, a sliding panel hidden in the stone. Behind it, a small glowing room. He had never seen this place before. Sia walked inside. Cole followed. In the center was a stone table. Old. Covered in symbols. At the center of the table, was a mirror. But not glass. A liquid surface that moved like water. Sia pointed to it. Then pointed at him. See. Cole leaned in. The surface rippled. Then, images. Him. Her. Sharing milk. Hands glowing. Minds touching. Then more. Other humans. Other aliens. All connected through the same bond. All changed. He stepped back, confused. This, has happened before? She nodded. Long ago. Lost. Now, returned. Cole looked at his reflection. He didn't look different. But inside, he felt alive in a new way. He wasn't just stronger. He was more aware. More awake. He sat down on the floor. Sia, what am I becoming? She sat beside him. Her voice was quiet. Not alien. Not human. Both. Cole thought for a moment. Hybrid? She shook her head. Bonded. She reached for his hand again. Their fingers touched. This time, there was no pain. Only light. And memory. Suddenly, he saw her again. But deeper. Her childhood. Running through glowing trees. Her mother, smiling, strong. Then, dark ships. Metal suits. Separation. Testing. Cages. Loneliness. He gasped and pulled back. His heart raced. They took everything from you. She nodded. But her face didn't hold hate. Only quiet strength. Until you. They sat in silence again. But it wasn't awkward. It was full. Safe. Cole touched his chest. What happens if I leave this place? What happens to the bond? She looked down. You stay alive. I weaken. He looked at her, shocked. So I've been healing because you're giving me part of you? She nodded. Yes. He stood up suddenly. That's not fair. You saved me. I can't just take from you. She stood too. Took both his hands. I chose. You did not take. That word again. Chose. Everything here was about choice. Not survival. Not power. Trust. He looked around the chamber. He thought about the moment he fell into this place. How he had wanted nothing more than to climb back out. Back to sunlight. Back to his old life. But now? Now he wasn't sure he could leave her behind. Not because he owed her. Not because of the bond. But because he cared. And he had no idea what that would cost him. The ground beneath Cole's feet vibrated. Just a little at first. A small tremble. Then again, stronger. He looked at Sia. She was already standing, her eyes glowing brighter than before. What's happening? He asked. She didn't answer. She turned to the wall, placed her hand against it. The stone rippled under her touch. The wall moved. Not like a cave-in. Not like shaking rocks. This felt different. The walls were breathing. Responding. Sia? Cole stepped back. Is this normal? She turned to him, serious. The cave is awake. It feels us. Suddenly, a loud hum echoed through the tunnels. Lights on the walls flickered to life, blue, gold, green. Dust fell from the ceiling. The air became heavier. The silence was gone. Sia grabbed his hand. We must go. Now. She pulled him through a tunnel he hadn't seen before. It opened on its own, like it knew she was coming. Like it welcomed her. They ran as fast as his still healing leg allowed. The floor pulsed under their feet. Every step echoed louder than the last. The walls didn't close in. They shifted, like they were alive. This cave, Cole panted. It's not just a shelter, is it? She nodded as they moved. It's part of my people. Long ago, it protected us. Now, it remembers. They reached a large chamber with a circular platform in the middle. Symbols lined the floor. Old. Glowing. Cole had seen alien tech before, but nothing like this. Where are we? The heart, she said. It knows the bond. Cole felt dizzy. The walls hummed louder. He touched the edge of the platform, and his skin lit up again. Not just his hands this time. His whole body. "It's reacting to me," he whispered. Sia touched his chest. "Because you carry part of me. And I carry part of you." Suddenly, the platform rose into the air. Not high, just a few feet. It floated silently. Sia didn't move away. She stood in front of him, close. Too close. If the cave shifts again, it will collapse. We may not escape. Cole looked into her glowing eyes. "Then what do we do?" She placed her hands on his shoulders. "Stay still. Let it see us." The room dimmed. The air became warm. The hum turned into a slow rhythm, like a heartbeat. The platform pulsed beneath them. Then, a sound. Like a whisper carried through stone. "Bond accepted." Cole gasped. "Did you hear that?" Sia nodded slowly. "It remembers. It knows we are true." The lights in the chamber began spinning slowly, wrapping around them like stars in motion. The walls no longer trembled. They flowed. They danced. But then, another shift. A sharper one. From deep below. A crack. A violent tremor. Cole lost his footing. The platform shook hard. Sia reached out. And pulled him into her arms. For a moment, they weren't standing on alien tech. They were just two beings. One human. One not. Holding on because the world beneath them was falling apart. He held her tightly. Not out of fear. But because something inside him told him. She is the only thing keeping you whole. And in that moment, she whispered in his mind again. "We can't go back, Cole. Not the same." He looked into her eyes. "Then let's go forward." The light on the platform burst upward, filling the chamber with gold. The walls stopped shaking. The floor became still. And the cave fell silent. But not empty. Aware. Sia stepped back, her hands still holding his. "It accepted us. But now, it will test us." Cole nodded. "Then let it try." Because now, he knew. They weren't just surviving. They were meant to be here. Together. The path opened on its own. A staircase made of glowing stone slid out from the wall. It led upward. Far, far upward. Cold air drifted down through the tunnel, fresh air. Cole stared at it in shock. "It's a way out." Sia said nothing. She didn't smile. She didn't move. Cole turned to her, his heart racing. "We can leave. We can make it." But Sia's eyes were already full of sadness. She looked at the staircase. Then back at him. "You can." The words hit him like ice. "What do you mean?" She stepped closer. Her hand touched the center of her chest. "My body is tied to this place. The bond that saved you is powered by this cave." Cole shook his head. "No. We go together. We'll find a way." Sia gave a soft smile. "If I step into the air above, my light will fade. My body will shut down. I will not live." He took a step back, struggling to understand. "But, there has to be a way. A cure. A reversal." She gently placed her forehead against his. A soft light passed between them. Not words. Not memory. Feeling. Peace. "I was born to serve this place," she whispered. "But I chose to serve you. To save you." Cole's voice cracked. "Then I'll stay. If leaving means losing you. I stay." She stepped away quickly. "No. You must go. You carry the bond now. If you leave, it goes with you. He stared at her, breath short. So that's it? You gave me everything, just so I could walk away. She nodded once. Slow. Heavy. That was always the purpose. The chamber around them dimmed slightly. Like the cave itself felt her sorrow. Cole paced. His fists clenched. This isn't right. You saved me from dying. From losing myself. And now I have to lose you. Sia stepped forward again. She touched his chest. Her hand glowed against his heartbeat. You didn't take me. I gave myself. His eyes burned. Tears slipped down. He didn't wipe them away. He let her see them. She smiled. One last, beautiful smile. Now you must go. The spark in you will awaken others. You'll carry me where I cannot go. The silence grew thick between them. Then Cole whispered. Before I leave. I want to do something. She nodded gently. Anything. He took her hands. Held them in both of his. Then lowered his head. And kissed her forehead. Soft. Silent. Full of everything he couldn't say. A warm pulse passed between them. Both of their lights glowed for just a moment. Then faded into calm. She pulled away first. Her eyes full of light. Now go, Cole. And don't look back. He turned to the staircase. It felt like walking away from the sun. But step by step, he climbed. And at the top. Light. Real light. The first sunlight in days. It blinded him. He stepped out. Collapsed on the grass. Breathing hard. Alive. A team of humans in suits rushed to him. We found him. He's alive. They surrounded him. Lifted him onto a stretcher. Voices asked him questions. But he didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the tunnel entrance. On the dark below. She's still down there, he whispered. The one who saved me. No one believed him. No one saw what he saw. But inside his chest. Her light still pulsed. Not as pain. Not as memory. As promise. The sunlight on his face felt fake. Too warm. Too soft. It didn't match what he felt inside. Because she was still down there. Alone. Fading. The doctors ran tests. They said his body was changing. Stronger reflexes. Faster healing. Even his blood glowed faintly in the dark. It's like something fused with your biology, one of them said. You're not entirely human anymore. Cole didn't respond. He was already thinking of her. Of her face when she said goodbye. Of how she never asked him to love her. But he did. Anyway. 3 days passed. He couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Not without hearing her voice in his head. You carry me now. He went back to the edge of the cave. The rescue team had sealed it. Too dangerous, they said. Too deep. Too unstable. But Cole didn't care. He knew one thing. If she died down there, he would never feel whole again. That night, he broke through the seal. Alone. No backup. No comms. Just a torch. And the spark still glowing under his skin. The cave greeted him like a memory. The walls still hummed. But fainter now. Sadder. He followed the glow in his bones. It pulled him like gravity. Down. Deeper. Past the platform. Past the chamber. To the place where she had first saved him. And there, she lay. On the stone floor. Still breathing. But just barely. Her glow was almost gone. Her skin dull. Her chest rising only once every few seconds. Sia. He dropped beside her. Held her hand. It was cold. But still soft. She opened her eyes, just a little. A whisper in his mind. Why, did you come back? You were free. Tears filled his eyes. I was never free if you weren't. I can't carry you. I have to share you. Then, he did something he wasn't sure would work. Something that had never been done before. Something forbidden. He bit his own wrist. Let his blood glow. Then held it to her lips. Take it, he whispered. Take it back. Take part of me. At first, she didn't move. Then, her lips parted. Just enough. The light flowed from him to her. And her eyes opened wide. Bright. Alive. She sat up fast. Gasping. Breathing deep. Her skin lit with gold and silver. And her voice returned, not in sound, but in feeling. What did you do? He smiled, weak now. Shared. Bonded. Fully. Their hands touched. The light between them was no longer hers. Or his. It was theirs. The cave responded. The walls pulsed again. The stones hummed louder. Not in warning. In welcome. From the floor, ancient roots lit up. They curled around the chamber like veins. Then up the wall. And into the ceiling. A new path opened. Not just up. But out. Sia stood, stronger than ever. Her voice now clear and steady. This place doesn't hold me anymore. Because now. I'm not alone. She looked at him. Not like a protector. Not like a sacrifice. But like an equal. A partner. You broke the law of our kind, she whispered. You gave me back what was never meant to return. He nodded. Then let's break one more. Together, they stepped onto the glowing roots. And the cave lifted them. Carried them toward the light. Not as prisoner and survivor. But as two bonded souls. Choosing the same future. Together. The roots carried them upward like an elevator of light. The air grew thinner. Cooler. Then, finally, brighter. Cole covered his eyes as the sunlight hit them for the first time. Real sun. Real sky. Real air. He turned to her. And she was still holding his hand. Sia stepped onto the grass like a child touching the world for the first time. She looked up at the clouds, blinking slowly. Then smiled. It was quiet. Gentle. But it said everything. They had made it. Together. In the distance, a rescue team shouted. Voices crackled over radios. Target has re-emerged. He's not alone, there's something with him. Do not engage yet. Cole felt Sia tense. He squeezed her hand tighter. They'll try to take you, he whispered. To study you. To separate us. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She just stepped closer, her shoulder brushing against his. Then I won't let go. The team approached. Guns down, but ready. Eyes wide. One officer spoke. Is that the life form we detected underground? Cole stood in front of her. Her name is Sia. She saved me. And I saved her. The officer frowned. We'll need to take her in. 4 tests. She could be dangerous. Cole laughed bitterly. You sealed her in. She's not the danger. Your fear is. Sia stepped forward on her own. No weapons. No threat. She raised her hand. And opened her palm. A soft golden light rose from it, peaceful, steady, warm. The officer stared, unsure. His hand didn't go to his weapon. He took a breath. And said nothing. That silence? It was permission. They passed through the team without a fight. No one stopped them. Some stepped back. Some simply watched in awe. Because Sia didn't walk like a stranger. She walked like she belonged. Hours later, Cole sat with her beneath a tree. Their hands still linked. She watched the wind move through the leaves. He watched her eyes, full of wonder. "Are you afraid?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not anymore. You gave me more than life. You gave me choice." He leaned his head back. "I thought I fell into that cave by accident. But now, I think I was meant to." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I was alone for so long. Until the one who wasn't supposed to find me, did." They sat in silence again. Not empty. But full. And across the galaxy, in distant places where old sparks slept, something shifted. Lights blinked. Hearts stirred. The bond had left the cave. And now, it would grow. Not because of war. Not because of science. But because one human stayed. And one alien girl chose. Together, they walked back to the world. Not apart. Not afraid. Her hand still in his. Never letting go. Milky Way, the end.